Hi everyone, my name is Cassie Payton, and I live in Wilmington, North Carolina. For the past 16 months, I've been fighting for transparency and accountability after what I believe to be serious misconduct, retaliation, and obstruction within the Wilmington Police Department. On May 27th, 2024, I was raped and sexually assaulted by two men, one a stranger, and one I had known for less than a year. When I screamed that I was calling the police, I was threatened with a gun. I reported the assault immediately at the hospital, suffering a 1-centimeter traumatic vaginal laceration, stage 2 hypertension, and large smears of blood on my leg and face. I was also given a 6-month suicide risk score of nearly 80% and a hospitalization risk score of 45. I reported copious blood on the couch where my rape occurred and on my rapist's hands and shirt. My case was assigned to an on-call detective with little experience handling violent crimes. As a result, police waited 17 days to examine the crime scene. By then, all forensic evidence was gone. They failed to pursue ring camera footage or other city surveillance that could have shown the threat of a gun or blood on my body from the assault, or my attackers fleeing the scene, one of them with my blood covering his hands. They also refused to seek Facebook warrants, even though both men were strangers who met for the first time the day of my assault through a roommate listing on Facebook Marketplace. My case was declined for lack of evidence, and neither attacker was charged. So I began investigating my own assault. I uncovered viable leads, studied the law, and connected with 8 other women who were also raped, assaulted, drugged, stalked, or threatened by the same men. They were ready to come forward to support my case. But once a pattern emerged, WPD stopped interviewing witnesses. District Attorney Jason Smith told me to be the squeaky wheel, to keep pushing for those statements because admissibility would ultimately be up to a judge. But when I did, WPD refused, and the DA told me, I can't make WPD do their jobs. Those are just some of my deepest concerns. I'll share more of them throughout this conversation, and others in time, as I continue finding purpose in the harm I've endured. Today, I'm speaking with mayoral candidate Billy Craig, a former Wilmington police officer and FBI task force officer, to talk about what transparency and accountability really look like in our city. We first connected almost a year ago through a petition I launched calling for policy change within WPD. That petition went on to receive nearly 11,000 signatures in just a few months. After I began speaking publicly, WPD removed my second detective, Detective Lucas Borton, from my case. He was the only officer who acted with urgency in obtaining the search warrant, who was fully familiar with the facts of my case, and the only one I had built genuine trust and safety with. After that, I wasn't treated like a victim of violent crime. I was treated like a liability. Under the North Carolina Crime Victims' Rights Act, I have the right to be informed about the criminal justice system and the right to be treated with dignity and respect. WPD violated all of those rights. And under the First Amendment, I have the right to free speech. Yet WPD and city officials retaliated against that right, repeatedly ignoring my emails, issuing false and contradictory statements, and obstructing both communication and evidence. Captain Rodney Dawson disclosed my protected medical records and misrepresented my confidential victim statements in writing to Councilmember Celeste Andrews, a political figure with no legal right to that information. It was unethical and deeply damaging. For nearly 10 months, the city of Wilmington claimed that report never existed. But after months of persistence and studying the law myself, I finally obtained it on September 19th. I then had to formally correct Captain Dawson's misrepresentations to both Chief Ryan Zudema and Councilmember Andrews to ensure the record was clear. In February, I spoke publicly at City Council, asking to meet with Mayor Bill Saffo and WPD leadership for answers. You spoke at that same meeting, Mr. Craig, and both of our speeches focused on transparency and ethics in city leadership. That's what I want to talk about today. Having served in both the Wilmington Police Department and the FBI, what are the biggest gaps you've observed between federal investigative standards and how WPD currently handles violent crime investigations, especially sexual assaults?
Well, prior to Chief Williams becoming the chief of police, and it might have actually happened while he was chief, there was a special victims unit within the Wilmington Police Department, part of the Criminal Investigations Division, and they did a lot of good work. Unfortunately, as people leave, retired, you just said, I've had it, left, those positions that get refilled, and then that unit kind of fell off to the wayside. Leaving individuals who are not experienced with working a sexual assault or
Sure.
maybe don't have the forethought on how to speak to somebody, especially in a sexual assault. You had them starting to investigate. And it probably caused some issues. I do not, like I said, that special victims unit they were very proactive. They'd get something in and they were in contact with somebody at the district attorney's office already working together.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think a lot of that fell by the wayside, and that caused a lot of issues. The nice thing about the FBI is everybody's trained the same. Right, especially when it comes to evidence collection. I mean, they'll vacuum, they'll cut stuff out, they'll use tape to lift.
Wow.
Fibers. They use alternate light sources. They take their time. And I believe the one thing that I definitely have always brought up, when something happens, everyone wants to rush in. I mean, and there's a reason to rush in, don't get me wrong, but there's also a reason to have somebody that walks in and comes in. Me, it's hands in the pockets, I'm looking around, I don't want to touch anything. I look at our crime scene folks when I worked at the PD saying, this is what I would like to get, I want to stay out of your way. You tell me what you do, let's confer after, let's make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
And, that worked great. Some people don't do that, and they just say, "We'll just collect evidence," and they go off to handle whatever part of the investigation. And then some detectives are not. I should say some detectives. Some officers are not just. They just don't want to collect evidence. They just, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? They're worried about messing up.
Sure.
And maybe teaching more, making the officers more comfortable with collecting evidence, showing them how to do it properly, making sure that if they collect one piece of evidence, they take the gloves off, they put another pair of gloves on, so they're not going to cross-contaminating. It's things like that.
Okay.
So there's a difference. CSI at the PD now, they've got it looks like they've got a really good crew. I mean, they've hired some civilians. There's a sergeant over it. Craig Melville.
Okay.
And Craig does a good job. He's squared away, and I think his team, or that team that he's on, I'm not saying it's his team, because he's like, hey, what can I do?
Yeah.
But I think they've got a good team now.
Good.
It's kind of come around. There's been some growing pains and everything else. Yeah, but that's pretty much the differences. The feds have a way to do it. Whereas other agencies might have a different way to do it, but the feds are like, this is how we do everything.
We often hear that trauma-informed policing is a priority, but rarely see it truly practiced in the field. Speaking as a survivor, it's critical for officers to understand that victims don't always have the language to explain coercive behavior. It's also common for victims to minimize or understate their experience of violence when reporting, because the brain instinctively protects itself from fully processing that trauma. There are moments of my rape that I still can't remember, and that's not uncommon. Trauma-informed care isn't just about being compassionate. It's about recognizing that victims may not use the legal or clinical language to describe what happened, and that officers may need to ask more thoughtful, revealing questions during investigations. Would you support implementing mandatory annual trauma-informed training for all WPD officers, detectives, and supervisors? Training led jointly by mental health professionals and survivors, focused not only on empathy, but on investigative accuracy, informed questioning, and accountability in practice.
Oh, most definitely. And the interesting thing that you bring that up, the new basic law enforcement program, that it got revamped. There is a lot of focus, especially with communication de-escalation. That's one of the blocks that I teach, is they talk about that, making sure that you're not standing over somebody, making sure that, you're eye to eye, or making sure that you sit lower than them so they feel like they're in control of the conversation. Also, to be sure to give that person an opportunity to speak.
Yeah.
Not cut them off. So I would, I love that idea. I mean, that's, I've never thought of that, and I'm glad you brought that up. Is when you don't practice those skills, they do falter, they do fall away.
Yeah, as any skill, right?
Yeah, and as you keep reminding them of how to do things, that's a good idea. I like that.
Thank you.
I would support that.
And as mental health professionals become more involved with officers who handle very difficult topics for victims to express or revisit, it's critical that mental health professionals make those who are not mental health professionals aware of what they're experiencing. I do recognize that in the same way that you said officers may be hesitant to collect evidence a certain way because they don't want to mess up. In my personal experience, I think that perhaps some questions were not asked because officers wanted to protect my mental health. And while I appreciate that safety, I do care about the facts, and I did not have the legal language that I needed at the time of reporting for certain aspects in my assault. The Wilmington Police Department offers a women's self-defense class. Detective Borton actually helped me get into it when my therapist recommended it. Within 30 minutes of learning that my case was declined for prosecution, I still showed up to that class, shattered in shock, but determined to reclaim some sense of body autonomy and personal agency. I had just left a meeting with Assistant District Attorney Connie Jordan, where she told me my attackers would face no punishment. Some of her comments were deeply harmful, and by the time I arrived at the class, my hands were shaking so badly that my signature on the attendance sheet looked like that of a child's. But on the second day, when we began floor work, sometimes an officer would need to be on top of me, and I experienced the onset of a panic attack. I started crying and couldn't breathe, and Officer Mel grounded me with compassion, talking me through it. And when the class ended, the officers didn't dismiss me. They actually asked me to stay. And we sat together on the floor for about an hour.
That's cool.
And I didn't feel like we were sitting together as officers and a victim, but as women. And it was such an empowering experience. And while I know those officers couldn't maintain personal connections with me beyond the class, that experience showed me how community engagement between officers and survivors of sexual violence can begin rebuilding public trust. If elected mayor, would you support creating a city program where WPD officers trained in trauma-informed response engage safely and professionally with survivors of sexual violence through a structured support group or community initiative?
So there's, and I'm kind of touch on some of the information you were just talking about, the jiu-jitsu kind of classes. So it's Melody Medlock, Cardi B, and Lynn Hartley.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think you could ask for three better people
to
teach that class.
I agree.
Cardi actually worked part of that special victims unit for a while, and she was very instrumental in getting things done. Lynn and I have been battle buddies when we were taking classes to beat up on each other. She and I, we got paired up, and I don't want that.
I'm sorry for you. She's tough.
And I hope she hears this one day. I don't want that woman hitting me again. And,
she's tough.
Yeah, Medlock, she scares me. I've got my revenge on her though when she's been doing. I've had to play the crazy guy. Imagine that, the crazy guy or bad guy on a hostage negotiation, and she's a hostage negotiator as well.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm trying to remember if Cardi does it as well or not. But anyway, I've been able to get my revenge on Medlock.
Yeah.
And when she calls up and says something, I'm able to yell at her and slam the phone down. And then later on, she comes up to me, shaking her head like, "Billy, I knew as soon as I said that." I was like, "Yep."
It's funny though, because my connection with them did extend beyond that class. Detective Borton sent me to a trial that was ongoing at the courthouse so that I could be informed about court proceedings and how a jury perceives information and how redirection works. In my time with Detective Borton, I think he realized that I have a very analytical mind and that I I'm very much that kid that was like, why is the sky blue? And like, if you don't give me an actual answer, I'm going to keep asking you. And sometimes Detective Borton would tell me things 12 times, but finally on the 13th time, he'd say it just a little differently. And I'd be like, oh, okay, got it. But
and then he's kicking himself in the rear end going, why did I just say it that way?
He's like, why?
Lucas is a real good detective.
Yeah,
He's a real good person.
Mm-hmm. Going back to what I was saying about the courthouse, though, during recess, I was walking downtown to go get pizza at Slice of Life, and Officer Mel, she was in one of the trucks, and she just rolled down her window, and she remembered me. She said hi, and so I know that class truly resonates with the officers, too. I think building those connections with officers and civilians is what establishes trust. But I do want to emphasize that I believe citizens have a specific role as well in engaging with law enforcement and establishing trust. That way, unfortunately, when tragedy does happen, you not only trust the system that you're running to for the law to work, but for ethics to work as well. Because we've seen a big gap between intent and implementation in the way trauma-informed practices are carried out here. From your background with both WPD and the FBI, what specific steps would you take as a mayor to ensure that trauma-informed training and survivor engagement aren't just symbolic, but actually embedded into officer evaluations, leadership expectations, and department culture?
Ooh. Again, you got to keep reinforcing it. It's like, when things have happened in any department, any police department, any sheriff's office, any federal agency, when things have happened and they go, oh crap, we should have done this, they implement it. And they say, okay, this is what we need to do now. There was a young lady that was shot and killed by a police officer 2012, 2014. And she was having a mental issue. The officer didn't understand that. He'd just gotten there. She pulled a gun up. And, unfortunately, he shot and killed her because he thought she was about to shoot him. After that, the mandate was to try and recognize when people are having maybe a mental issue or a mental breakdown, and trying to use your words more than a stick or a spray or a gun. Maybe, and I remember we used to have rape crisis. We would do a thing with rape crisis about once a year, if not every other year. And I can't remember the last time that occurred.
Yeah.
But it was just to come in, just a kind of a refresher.
Right.
Hey, this is who we are. This is what we do. There was some headbutting between rape crisis and police, or especially detectives, because rape crisis wants to come in and sit and, while you're interviewing the person at the hospital, where the officer is trying to ask that person questions, and sometimes the rape crisis person will pipe up and it cause problems, and so there was a big disconnect. I learned a long time ago to sit down and just look, and I would grab the person, bring them out, and say, look, I need to interview them. Please don't answer for them. I'm looking for specific things.
Right.
And so I did everything I could, and I know some other detectives do the same thing I did, is to try to build that bridge between a detective and rape crisis, because they're there to help. That's the bottom line. They're there to help, and you're there to hopefully find the person, investigate,
right,
and hopefully bring.
And those
charges.
are two very different things.
Oh, yes.
Even though investigation is public service, unfortunately, kind of like I was saying previously, is sometimes difficult questions do have to be asked when you turn to the system, because even though victims have rights, perpetrators have rights too, and a thorough investigation is critical. When Chief Ryan Zudema took office, I sent an email outlining my ongoing concerns, issues that have gone unanswered for more than 16 months. I also requested basic information that I'm legally entitled to, including the warrant numbers and the name of my original detective. That information is required for my victim compensation application with the North Carolina Office of Victim Services. If that application is approved, it would help reimburse me for lost wages, trauma therapy, and mental health medications. This application is time sensitive. We're now nearly 17 months past the assault, and the 2-year deadline is approaching. Despite that urgency, neither the chief nor anyone at WPD has responded. As mayor, how would you ensure that when a victim raises allegations of retaliation, obstruction, or neglect after speaking publicly about their case, those claims are actually investigated and addressed?
Well, you got internal affairs, you got human resources that can investigate. It really is, I don't, usually the mayor or the city council won't get involved until at the point in time that there's a need to suspend, fire, demote, whatever, an officer or detective or whomever.
But if that's not the goal, and the goal is to receive information that you're legally entitled to.
Yes, I mean, yeah.
Do you think there's a way to build relationships with the officers as mayor to where if you intervene and say, hey, what's going on? Why doesn't this victim have access to this legal information she's entitled to? Do you think that starts with a mayor that prioritizes officers feeling protected and exercising those rights?
The one thing when I teach basic law enforcement training, one of the other blocks I teach, I bring up to folks, if you cannot respect your rights, how can you respect anybody else's rights? I mean, it goes hand in hand.
That's powerful, yeah.
It's like when I had somebody look at me, so, kind of like drawing that thin blue line thing, so well, you're a cop first. I said, well, I'm a citizen first.
Right.
It needs to be, I mean, if that's the case where you're having to go that far up the chain and, someone has to go, what's going on here? That needs to probably be addressed a little bit better.
I appreciate you saying that.
I think that needs to be addressed a lot better.
During your February 4th speech at City Council, you mentioned that WPD was falsely representing statistics, that felonies were being dropped to misdemeanors, and that some officers simply didn't want to take on certain cases. You also said WPD has a code of ethics spelled out by the acronym PROTECT, PROTECT is how you presented that, and that not all of those ethics were being honored. Could you elaborate on that? Which parts of that code do you feel are being ignored, and how would you address those failures as mayor?
One part of PROTECT is transparency. And, if you're not going to be transparent, you don't need to use the word. I just, I hear, well, transparent, yet when things have occurred, and I'll say it flat out, when things have occurred, it's been brushed under the rug. It's been brushed under the rug not only by the department or whatever department, let's say in the city, but then brushed under the rug by human resources themselves. And that's what causes a lot of problems. Everybody screws up. Everybody makes a mistake. And if you make an honest mistake, or it's like, I actually thought this, okay. If you're running around using racial slurs, no, you don't need to be here. If you're popping positive on a drug test, you probably still need to be employed. If you have a city council member basically threaten you with your job, that needs to be addressed as well and not hidden. Because when you have a city official that's able to, try and throw their weight around and then it gets covered up, it's gotten to the point within the city. And I can talk a lot about the police department, but let's just say within the city, where if a subordinate is talking to their boss, or a subordinate is talking to the chief of police, deputy chief, lieutenant, captain, and that person has a reputation of being retaliatory or just saying, well, I never said that. It's gotten to the point where officers are recording every conversation that they have with the person across from them. And I'm not talking about Joe Blow citizen. I'm talking about other cops. And when you have made such a horrible work environment like that the people who work there, who work for the administration, can't trust the administration, but they need that paycheck, and they're having to record the conversation to protect themselves. That is a huge red flag,
right,
on how things have been and how things will continue to be unless you get a hold of it quickly. I like to advocate for that ISS report to get released.
Yeah.
Because the ISS report is probably going to spell out a lot of issues. It's probably going to cause some issues at first. But I think if you get the information out there and say, this is what was occurring, this is why this department is like this, you let the citizens know. I believe probably 90% of the citizens are like, well, crap, that's not what I was told, or that's not what I was informed of, or that's not what I heard. It's like, well, here it is in black and white, done by a third party, not within the city, not HR, not internal affairs, but a third party came in, sat down, interviewed people. They're only supposed to be here 2 days, they were here 10. Every time they spoke to somebody, they learned something new, so they kept going down this rabbit hole. That's the kind of stuff that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And
thank you for sharing that for listeners who may not have known about that existing. There's a forensic chemical called luminol.
Yes.
And for up to 72 hours, even after blood is washed away, it can reveal where blood was. I do want to speak just a little graphically because it's necessary for the conversation. What was told to me by the district attorney's office is that the injury that I sustained, which is medically determined as a 1 centimeter traumatic vaginal laceration, traumatic is indicative of forcible contact, that could happen consensually. And therefore, there was no evidence to prove that this wasn't a consensual encounter, despite large smears of blood on my leg and face and above my upper lip and in my nostril, and the amount of blood I reported on the couch. And while that injury may happen consensually, I haven't experienced that personally, but while that may be a possibility that cannot be ruled out, what I stand by is that what doesn't happen after an injury like that is that someone keeps going to the point where the forensic blood transfer is in the pattern that it was. And not only that, but my stage 2 hypertension and other trauma indicators. And so that's initially why I created the petition calling for policy change, because I expressed to the patrol officer in the hospital that there was critical blood evidence there. And I was led to believe that it was critical as well. So I explained to you that after going public, there was what I believed to be retaliatory action within the Wilmington Police Department, witnesses not being contacted back to come forward in my case, me not receiving emails about information I need to process my crime victim compensation application. How do you personally define retaliation within a policing context, and what safeguards or oversight systems should exist for victims or citizens to safely report it, especially when those contributing to the harm include top-ranking officials like the chief, deputy chief, or captain, since those people are typically who would oversee the complaint?
I've said it before, everybody F's up. All right.
There's an ancient proverb from Hannah Montana, and she says, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days.
Yeah.
You have 2 girls. Did they like Hannah Montana? They're younger than me, though. I don't know if Hannah was around.
No, she was around.
She was around.
They're 18 and 20.
Okay.
So, yeah, but no, they were more Blues Clues and
yeah. Now I'm just showing my age.
Wonder Pet. They're on the way. They're coming to save the day.
That's funny. But yeah, everybody.
How are we going to
makes
work?
mistakes.
See, I mean.
All right.
It's still, I'm sorry.
Sing it, Mr. Craig.
No.
Say it with your chest.
No, because I walk in the house every now and then, and they're sitting in front of the TV in the living room, and I hear, Wonder Pets. Oh, no, wait. I walk out, so what are you doing? Like, we're just reminiscing. Like, oh, my God.
You gotta. What was your favorite childhood show?
Girl, when I was a kid? Mm-hmm. So when I was a kid, Saturday mornings you woke up and the cartoons on. So I watched the old Looney Tunes.
Okay.
And of course I look at them. I think about it now. It's like, some kind of racially charged stuff in there. As a kid, I didn't understand.
Yeah.
My favorite character was always Bugs Bunny. Yosemite Sam.
Yeah. You give big Yosemite Sam vibes. You do.
Well, that, but also Foghorn Leghorn.
Who?
Foghorn Leghorn.
Is that Looney Tunes?
The big chicken dude. You remember the guy?
Oh! I was watching Hannah Montana.
Because one of his famous statements that I used to put up on my desk, it was, "You're about to exceed the limitations of my medication."
Love it.
Off all that. Where were we?
In a policing context, how do you personally define retaliation?
Oh, the retaliation. Retaliation can be in all kinds of ways. It could be, it could be because of ignorance. It could be because they just don't want to deal with it. It could be they're kicking the can down the road to somebody else. The one thing you mentioned about Rodney Dawson that I kind of jotted down earlier, that he was, he released this.
At the direction of Donnie Williams.
Okay.
For the record.
All right. So that's what I wanted to ask you. Because Rodney Dawson is very good with policy and procedure. And I was going to actually mention that and just say, how did that happen? Because I can tell you right now, Rodney wouldn't have done that unless he was ordered to.
So I invited all of council, including Mayor Sappho, to my peaceful protest that I had held in December. Unknowingly announced it for the UNCW graduation date, and all of my girlfriends were like, Cassie. But I sent my initial request December 27th of 2024, and I didn't get that record until September 19th of this year. So it took 10 months of me persistently exercising my rights. I was told by the city for nearly 10 months that this record didn't exist, but Celeste told me personally that it did. And when I received the documentation, I saw that Celeste Andrews asked Donnie Williams to explain the policy change I was calling for and essentially how we got here. He said that he would have someone prepare a report for her, and that person was Captain Rodney Dawson. Donnie Williams also used a post of mine praising the Wilmington Police Department self-defense class and a personal card that I had written to Detective Borton, thanking him for his service and for how he met me with respect and dignity that I'm legally entitled to as a victim. Unfortunately, my words were used to protect the department's image. That email came from Donnie to Celeste. And then Captain Dawson disclosed everything. For me, it feels as though Detective Borton, perhaps Captain Dawson, I can never speak for them, but I think maybe they felt limited the same way that I told you that Detective Borton said he wasn't going to press charges because it would be a slap in the face to Connie.
And that might have been a bad choice of words for him to say. The district attorney's office lost one hell of a warrior when she retired. I guarantee you, she picked through that case, picked through your case, forward, backwards, up and down, sideways, through rain, sleet, hell, or snow, to figure out a way to do it. And
Can I share something fully transparent with you?
Yeah.
Because I know transparency is a big part of your campaign. My experience was not that with Miss Connie Jordan. This is actually a moment where I want to emphasize Detective Borton's care in this dynamic. I essentially ended up investigating my own case when I realized that officers were not leaving the department to seek evidence, whether that was a lead through someone that Thomas had given admissions to, whether it was other victims who would have potentially qualified as, it's called a 404B witness with previous bad acts. There were 8 other women who have experienced rape, sexual assault, drugging, stalking, or harassment by my attackers, and all of them were willing to come forward. I ended up writing a report. Detective Borton knew about this, and I had a meeting with Connie Jordan and Detective Borton where we discussed these women. And she told me that unless these women had been assaulted the same way by dual perpetrators, that it wouldn't be admissible evidence. Later, after I publicly advocated for my case, I met with the district attorney's office. When I mentioned that to Jason Smith, who was not the district attorney who declined my case because it was formerly Ben David, when I mentioned that to him, he was like, whoa, what do you mean there's other women? There's a discrepancy, and that might be why I'm not being responded to by WPD now. But Connie Jordan claimed that she didn't know any of these women existed. even though Detective Borton and I had a meeting with her discussing them. And this is all on recording. I have heard within the system that Connie is very driven, and obviously she had a long career, so I don't disrespect that. But in the same way that you said everyone makes mistakes, I think that did happen in this case. I don't know if there was means to maybe protect WPD from this being on court record. Hey y'all, I've cut this section for confidentiality. Mr. Craig and I talked about other victims connected to my case. And while that conversation isn't directly related to city transparency, I do want to note that he expressed genuine care and concern for those women. I'm releasing a podcast after the holidays where I'll share my experience as a rape victim in this jurisdiction, supported by recordings from WPD, the District Attorney's Office, and even a meeting I had with Mayor Sappho. That meeting only happened after I mobilized community members to email him when my city council speech went unanswered. When we finally met, it wasn't with any officer who worked my case. It was Mayor Sappho, City Attorney Meredith Everhart, and Deputy Chief Kelvin Hargrove. Deputy Chief Hargrove came without my case file. I spent over an hour sharing my concerns, and at the end, instead of receiving answers, I was asked to email the same questions I had just asked, and then instructed to contact ADA Connie Jordan myself on behalf of the Wilmington Police Department. That moment summed up the accountability gap in our city, where responsibility is pushed back onto the victim. When I share these details publicly, I know it may further erode community trust in WPD and city leadership. If elected, what is your plan to rebuild that trust? Not through PR or public statements, but through real structural and cultural change.
Well, the one thing I want to do, and I even mentioned it on my website, it's partnerships. Mm-hmm. I don't know how often the current mayor or other mayors have gone and sat in that office, but I'm planning on being there every day for several hours.
Yeah.
But I want partnerships. I want community partnerships. I want the religious community to come in. I want people like Ray Prices to come in. I want to sit down, and the one sign I want to have on the outside of my doors: leave your ego here. Because when you walk in, you sit across the table with somebody. There's no rank, there is no power, it is people talking, trying to figure out a problem.
Humanity.
There you go. Thank you. I've been trying to think of a word, but yeah, just say, okay, look, what's going on? How did this happen? What can we do to fix this? And if it's a situation where they got to come and they just want to blow up and scream and yell, that's fine. Let them do that for a minute and say, okay, now let's stop. Partnerships with the community, partnerships with religious, nonprofit, business. I want to do a lot with mentorship. The old guy that has a plumbing store and wants to let some kids come in and teach them a little bit of plumbing.
Yeah.
I want, that's the kind of community I want back here. I want when the older lady, when she called in and said, look, I've got these drug dealers sitting next door to my house that causing problems, threatened her. Whoever picked up that phone did what needed to be done.
Did what needed to be done.
But anyway, they did what needed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And a few months later, there's an FBI SWAT team kicking in the door and taking those gentlemen to jail. But that's someone in the community who's like, this is my community, not yours, you drug dealing jacklegs. Try not to cuss. I tend to do that a lot.
Adds character. Adds character.
Oh shit! I should have that. And I've also mentioned too, I want some whistleblower protection for the city employees, mm-hmm. because they do. They come forward and they tell the command and they tell, their supervisors, and no matter where it is who it is in the city. If they've got an issue and they bring it forward, well, again, they're retaliated against, or they get a less than on their evaluation because he's difficult to work with. Well, I'm not difficult to work with. I'm just truthful. I apologize for being truthful. I'm trying to tell you what's going on.
In an interview with WHQR, you mentioned Wilmington's growing development and how our infrastructure can't keep up. I really agree with that concern. In many ways, it reminds me of that song. How does it go? It's like, I know we seem to go. You know what I'm talking about? But you don't know what you got to. You paved paradise and put up a parking lot. That's the lyric. You paved paradise and put up a parking lot. Yeah. You said that some people may want Wilmington to be like Charleston, but that Wilmington is Wilmington. So when you're not campaigning or focused on public safety, what makes Wilmington to you? Any local businesses, beach walks, or family traditions that make the city feel like home?
Oh my. There's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I still remember we could park on the side of the road on South College, right by Oleander Drive.
What?
Oh yeah. I remember Monkey Junction wasn't there. I remember when the 17th Street Extension wasn't there. There was a huge wooded area.
Yeah, you were born and raised here, right?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, you could take your trucks and drive back there and hang out and look. And some people went back there to do probably things they weren't supposed to, but that wasn't me. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
That's the story.
That's the story. We'll stick to it.
Well, thank you for being so transparent and open during this conversation. I really appreciate it. Before we close, is there anything that you'd like to inform voters about as we go into early voting this week?
Okay, so let me. I'm gonna jump in my soapbox real quick.
All right.
Say a few things. Yes, I have my real estate license. No, because that's been coming up. You got your real estate license. Yeah, I help one or two people at a time. People, not corporations. I help a new time home buyer, or help somebody that had bought their first home and now they got a family that needs something bigger. So that's what I like to help. I help do, So, and if I'm listing a house for somebody, I do everything I can to lessen the monetary burden on them. I really do, because I'm making money off of it, but I'm more worried about them making money. It's their money, not mine. I do have my private investigator license, and I do teach basic law enforcement training. I probably teach more than I do real estate. I probably teach more than I know I teach more than I do PI work. Mm-hmm. So what I hope is people don't go, oh my God, he's a realtor. Yeah, but again, I teach more, and I'm PI. The reason why I got my real estate license, I pulled $12,000 out of my retirement 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I could take the classes, have some, money set aside to pay for certain things, and I started doing it, and I did pretty well.
Yeah.
And it was nice, but the whole reason why I did it, because I needed an extremely flexible job, which it is, but I needed to make more money for my family because the city paycheck wasn't cutting it anymore.
Sure.
So I want people to understand that. But if anybody wants to reach out to me, CraigForWilmington.com. You can find my Facebook page. Hit me up. My phone number's on there, my personal phone number. So if anybody wants to call, talk, ask questions, please don't call and cuss me out at 2 o'clock in the morning. But if you feel like you got to do that, okay. My idea with what I'm trying to do is I'm just tired of what has occurred. Again, with the city government, with the infrastructure, with our taxes, with employees not having some type of protection when they come forward. I want something different. I want employees to be able to live where they work.
It's early voting this week, so get out there.
October 16th. North Library. Let's see here.
Wow, radio voice.
All right.
I'm very excited for you, and I'm so thankful for your motivation to serve the city and keep this place the home that you're proud of. So thank you for your time.
It's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
Really good to see you.
Thank you.